Welcome to another episode of Behind the Studs, your home improvement and remodeling podcast, where the two most entertaining guys discuss the do's and don'ts in home construction and in the remodeling industry. Remember that you can nail it, paint it, or just tune into the show. How about that? Here are your hosts, Colin Shaw and Jimmy Driscoll.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Behind the Studs.
Hey there.
Jimmy, how are we?
I'm tired.
You're tired? Yeah, you worked hard.
I hang at the sheetrock with the men there.
The last 2 days, man.
Yeah, I tell you, it's been crazy. We hang at, use my mato, put it up in there. Now I'm going to go have some potsushima. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
That means shepherd's pie in French. And I'm not even French Canadian. But I've worked with so many French Canadians that hang sheetrock. Hey,
yes, they are amazing.
You know, and that's it.
Now, do you wear the stilts or no?
No. Never did, never will.
Okay, all right.
I'll end up on my ass with broken legs and limbs.
I want to see it.
No. I didn't even know how to get up on them. What happens when you got to go to the bathroom? You're going to get off the stilt. How do you get off of them? How do you get on them, get off of them?
I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, my God, yeah.
But they're good at it.
Well, they used to use them when we were building Mohegan Sun.
Really?
They were skim coating the ceilings in the hotel, and Perini was the safety and the contractors on the job.
Yep.
And they looked up on the 15th floor, and there were the sheetrockers, the mudders.
Yeah.
Guys were mudding the ceilings, and
Yep.
they were on stilts.
Yep.
They were above the safety railing.
Oh, no.
So if they slipped, it'd just go right off.
Right over? Oh,
so
my
Perini
God.
was like, get those things off.
You're gonna do it on a ladder.
Yeah, do it on a ladder.
Do it on a ladder.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Hey, listen, we got a guest this week.
I know we do.
Isn't that exciting?
I tell you, the man, the myth, the legend.
Right. Absolutely. So we have Andrew Legge with us. Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Great. How are you guys?
Andrew Legge from Tahoe, right?
From Tahoe.
That's right. That's right.
Nice.
Lucky.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Beats Connecticut for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It actually snowed about 10 minutes ago.
Really?
Get out.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
it
we
accumulate
get
it all or no?
It accumulated yesterday, but
Okay.
then we lost it all towards the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the end of our storm season, and we get some funny ones that slide through here. So it was nice to see that. But in about a week or so, it'll stop, and then it'll be sunny every day for about 4 months.
Wow. And what's the temperature like out there?
It'll swing from about 80 to 40 almost every day.
Wow.
Awesome.
Okay. 80 is good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Whatever frostbite you have, it thaws out by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Or midday. And then it freezes again.
No lasting injuries. You got to wait for winter for that to happen.
Oh my God. Dude.
So before we get to what you do for a living, hobbies wise, do you guys you do a lot of skiing out there since you're out there?
Yeah, that's why we live here.
Yeah.
You'll find a whole bunch of people here, myself being one of them, that have migrated from the East Coast in this direction. Tons of UVM grads, and it's really about a recreational lifestyle is why people end up here. And then every once in a while, you try and find something to do with your time. I didn't take the direct post-college route that a lot of people here did.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a fun place to live because what you'll find is that almost everybody here has chosen to live here. So there's very little complaining that goes on.
Nice. There's a whole lot of
There's a lot
complaining
of
going
complaining
on over here. I'll tell you that. And the number one person right here.
Yeah. We're
We
happy not
just
to
all
have
of a
that.
sudden, turn 80 and we wake up and we forgot to move.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Well,
now.
I mean,
So yeah.
as mentioned, I'm originally an East Coaster, so I know exactly how that can go.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, you look healthy and
Doesn't he?
vibrant. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, we hate you already.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I figured we'd spiral into that, so let's just go.
Yeah. We'll just pretend for the rest of the show. Don't
Let's
worry.
talk about your miserable job.
All right. So tell us what it is you do, sir.
Yeah, buddy.
So Havelock Wool is a company that we put together about 6.5 years ago on a very simple premise. The residential and commercial insulation market is rather substantial in size, somewhere between 14 and 16 billion US dollars.
Wow.
And it's filled with a lot of subpar products at best.
Okay.
And a quick review of the industry led us to understand that the conversation was basically a manufacturer's led race to the bottom, in our view, right? Of course, these are all opinions, whereby the only measurable unit in the equation was cost. And if that's the only thing you're measuring insulation against, you're kind of missing something really important in what you're building. And so there's a practice that's gone on for hundreds, if not thousands of years, whereby people in other parts of the world take what is arguably the most dynamic fiber on the planet that has evolved as an insulator in nature across thousands of years, and use it in the structures that we build. And that fiber is, of course, wool fiber. And so that's what we do. We buy wool in New Zealand and we can talk about why we get it from there.
Yeah.
But in short, we buy wool in New Zealand. We ship it to ourselves very, very, very effectively on ocean freight to our factory in Reno, where we make insulation in both batt and loose fill form. And after 6 years, I can say we've turned a little bit of a corner, and we now actively ship across North America. We are seeing, it'd be a stretch to say heavy interest offshore, but actually we did close our first deal today that's going to Japan, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, wow. Great.
And so, but the focus of our business is North America. And the reason why I make that distinction is the Canadians are really forward thinking with building science and in turn building practices. So we're in that market and that discussion quite often.
So this is something that's been around for many, many years that not necessarily everybody knows about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Wool, it kind of goes back to the 1940s and war preparedness discussions by the head of Burlington Industries in front of Congress, and a desire to see fibers move to more synthetics because they could be more easily controlled. And I don't want to get into this sort of profit monger thing, right? Because we all need to keep the lights on. But essentially, you could get out of a market that was volatile, the wool one, and you could make your own fibers, and then you could sort of better plan your business and better plan your scale. But in those days, there was around 100 million sheep in the US. And, now there's 30 million in New Zealand, which is about 11% of the annual yield. And in the US, there's almost no wool to speak of. So, there's been a big change in 60 to 80 years.
Okay.
But that fiber, literally the first sheep were domesticated 10,000 years ago. And that fiber has evolved to do some really cool stuff that is inherent. And that's protecting sheep from the elements, hot and cold, wet and dry. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of working for you all the time. If you look at it under a microscope, it's very dynamic. It has 5 follicles. There are a bunch of amino acids in there that are going to bond with harmful chemicals like formaldehyde. So it's just one of these things where, yes, it's very much turned into an awareness first, education gain second. But for anybody thinking logically, particularly if you can get it inside the primary air barrier because of the indoor air quality aspects, using wool as insulation is a no-brainer.
Right.
It's just, you guys will know better than me. This industry does not like change.
No.
And so
it does not. No.
Well, I have some news.
Yeah.
If I can stop you for a second. There is talk, and I heard this from Caroline, by the way.
Okay.
We talked about this, and you probably have heard about this too. There is a gentleman or a company out there right now which is trying to do now insulation abatement, just like the mold abatement. Have you heard this yet? Besides the lead abatement, now they're trying to jump on the bandwagon that they want to get abatement companies in to remove insulation because of its harmful effects. Have you heard that?
Wow. I have not heard that.
So what I'm trying to say is you may be sitting on a gold mine here because, well, I wanted to ask you, like the wool, does the wool have any dander or any any bad side effects like allergies or stuff like that where insulation?
It's actually, it's actually hypoallergenic.
Right.
Wool is also a keratin, so it's protein based, which means it doesn't support the growth of mold. And so, one of its major characteristics is active moisture management. So literally those 5 follicles in the fiber will take in moisture when it is over 65% relative humidity. And then when the ambient air drops below that level, it will actually desorb and put that moisture back in the air. And this is actively occurring through seasonality and, of course, different climate changes. And one of the major things, of course, is that, it's not conducive to mold development, but it also means that it's not damaging the fiber, right? It's got all of this dynamic construct, which means that year in, year out, it's actually going to keep doing what it's supposed to do. It's not going to break down. It's not going to mold. And therefore, to your point, it's not going to be subject to abatement.
All right. Because we have a problem right now, and it's becoming more and more frequent because of climate change, and we're getting more mold. And Colin can testify to this too, as I do. And it's just happened today. We are trying to hang sheetrock on, and they're putting our 15 insulation in, which is too much insulation in a 2x4 wall, but that's code. So what's happening is there's no breathing in these homes. Houses don't breathe. They went from seal tight, that's a problem, back to opening it up, getting more lucid, get more airflow. Now we're going back to that again. We were discussing this 2-3 months ago, that they're sealing these houses up, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
They basically say your house cannot breathe. They do not want it to breathe at all.
And you can't breathe.
I mean, I don't know how that's healthy to keep, everything locked inside the house and not allow it to breathe.
So you're breathing chemicals, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. Not only the chemicals, but, a family of 4 will generate like 2.5 gallons of water per day. Where's that stuff going if it can't get out of the house?
Right.
No, you're right. Yeah, right. I don't get it. I don't understand how this is a good idea.
I mean, we got it right with the roofs now. We finally figured that out, that we have vents, soffit vents. We do ridge vents, so air circulates out the top of the house. But on the sides of the house, I have to say, working on old homes, we've gone this before. You actually you own the house. There was one building that was built in the 1700s, 1600s, and there was a gap between the planks of the house and the siding. Right? I got to tell you, it was amazing. It was cheaper to heat it, and it was cheaper to cool it. Because there was a vapor barrier, but there was circulation. So I'm trying to promote you, and basically I'm feeling what you're saying, that wool insulation is so much better for circulatory reasons, for like water capacity, which is amazing, which every house should do, be able to expand and contract. So I'm on board with you. I'm on board with your product already.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, and the cool thing is, everything that we talk about, our company's called Havelock Wool, but you can take the Havelock out. That part doesn't matter. This is all about wool. And when you look at wool, and what we're talking about here is a coarse wool fiber. So let's define that very quickly. It's really easy. If you're out there, running or exercising or whatever in the wintertime or skiing, you're going to be wearing merino wool. And the micron level of merino wool is going to be around 16 to 18. It's going to be softer. It's going to sit against your skin, and it's not going to bother you at all. We use a coarse wool fiber, which we all might be able to remember, our mom making us wear the old wool sweater. That was coarse wool. And that's what we're using. And that micron level is more around 34 to 36. So admittedly, that fiber has changed since, 30, 40 years ago when we were wearing those sweaters. But that's what we're using. We don't have a synthetic mix. You can literally roll around in this stuff. You can have your kids roll around in it. And it's just amazing what the inherent characteristics of this fiber are. And so I don't have a background in this space, but I was spending a bunch of time. I lived in Asia for 6 years, and I was spending a bunch of time in New Zealand. And I just got captivated by the thought of doing this. And so I started speaking to architects and builders back here in the US. And every time I had a conversation, all we heard was, bring that product to this market. We need it. We've got to have a better solution.
I mean it. Right. I agree with you.
Yeah. So that's why we did it.
What's the difference between when I was growing up in Massachusetts, we had a Victorian home, old. My father just went to a home show, was torn between the foam insulation, blown-in foam, or the blown-in Rockwool insulation. At the last moment, thank God, he changed his mind, and we went with the Rockwool insulation because the foam insulation became carcinogenic, and people who had to put it in the house, they had to take it all out. The difference between Rockwool insulation and original wool is there a huge diversity on that?
Yes, there is. Rockwool, let me start by saying I think Rockwool in certain places makes a good product. I'm a fan of what they're doing for exterior insulation.
Yeah.
It's definitely a better product than Fiberglass, but that's a very low bar, so I don't even want to drag them down.
Nice.
But what they are is it's basalt rock and slag. And so if anybody were to say anything, slag is a byproduct from steel smelting. So what you need to do is you take that basalt rock and you crush it, and then you include it at very high heat with the slag. And I think they've gone away from it, but I think some of their products still include a formaldehyde binder, which turns some people off. Yeah. But their product, performance-wise, has to be way better than Fiberglass. Their product innovation is really interesting, particularly on what they're doing with some of the board stuff, and notably on the exterior. The negative commentary on them is that high heat and the carbon footprint. If you want to get into that discussion, and I'm not sure you guys do, but no. What people will say about them is, I don't know, this is not a substantiated claim, but we've had people report to us that their new factory in West Virginia was burning 90 tons of coal a day.
Wow.
And that's a product that takes a lot of energy to make. So people are going to say something bad about Rockwool. I think that's going to be it. Otherwise, I think they're making some good products. And I think that, as I say, I think the performance is far beyond, the sort of lowest grade fiberglass and cellulose options that are out there.
Do you feel in the future that fiberglass is going to get phased out?
Oh, that's a really difficult question for me to answer. And
they got a pretty strong hold.
They got a strong hold, but technology, I think,
they're huge. They're cheap, and a lot of people just want cheap. And so I think the market needs a fiberglass. On the health side, I think that it's more dangerous than people know. And I think they've already taken care of that, because that's not really talked about. If we ever say anything, they get aggravated with us. So I'm not here to make any comments about that. But I think the industry needs a product like that for now. One of the things that we spend a lot of time trying to communicate to people is insulation is about 1.8% of construction costs. So if you're going to go from a fiberglass to a wool, and it's going to cost twice as much, and sometimes it can be more than twice as much, that's going to run through your construction budget as like adding 1%, right? Wow. So this is sort of rounding error stuff, but you can't get in the conversation at the traditional time, because if you wait until it's installation time, the house is over budget. It's delayed by a couple months. Somebody wants the marble countertops and the $30,000 chandelier. So the more expensive insulation is not coming into the equation.
Right.
So it needs to be a health and wellness driven buyer. It needs to be a person who's done their research and really likes the idea and the characteristics of the product. Or it needs to be somebody that buys in early and just says, I'm going to make sure my budget keeps that stuff in it because I know how much better it is. So that's what we face as a business. Like, we got to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's taken us a few years to figure out where our sweet spot is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the market can use another option, because for right now, like around here, we've got the blown in, we do the spray foam, which is a much more expensive product than the fiberglass. And a lot of people are doing it because it's, better energy efficient house. So, I mean, I think if they could, have another option that is still probably about the same price as blown spray foam, but it's healthier for you. I think it's great to have.
Yeah, I agree. I totally
It's
agree.
also a great compliment, and we try to convey that message. If you put 3 inches of foam in the lid, to push the dew point to the outside, and that again varies by climate change. I'm not by climate zone. I'm not exactly sure the inches that you guys use, but probably 2 or 3. Point being, if you've got a 2x10 or a 2x12 up there, you're not filling that cavity.
Right.
It's very well known that spray foam, one of the many things that'll off gas is formaldehyde. And it's equally well known. Well, we're trying to make it equally well known that wool eats formaldehyde and irreversibly bonds with it. So we even say to people like, look, guys, we don't care if you don't put us in the whole house, but if you're going to spray the lid with foam and put fiberglass everywhere else, at least cover the foam with wool.
Right.
And so, we're not out there saying we've got to be, an all or nothing. We're out there trying to educate people to say there are huge advantages to getting some wool in any project. And I think, back to your question about fiberglass, I don't think it's going to go away. I think you're going to start to see all sorts of hybrid solutions. There's this aero barrier thing out there now, which, you can spray to fill cracks, which I'm still trying to learn about it. It doesn't make any sense to me, but apparently it works. And I will happily say that we're just not fans of foam. And we are working in the building science community to try and get beyond, because out here, they're still doing a ton of unvented roofs.
Really?
Yeah, yes. And conventional wisdom says an unvented roof has to be filled with spray foam. And we are trying to say that with the building science community, not us, because no one cares what we have to say. We are trying to come up with a solution whereby you can use airtight vapor variable membranes and wool to continue with a non-vented application, but avoid foam. And so there's a building science group that we're working with trying to figure out if we can get down that path. And I think that would be a really big win for the industry. If we can come up with something there. So that's our sort of latest and greatest, and we're pretty excited about it.
Nice. Now, is the wool like denser than the fiberglass, so that it has like a soundproofing attribute to it as well, or no?
Yes, the answer is yes. Our noise reduction coefficients are better than fiberglass, better than cellulose, on par with Rockwool, and cotton is a little bit better. And what I can say is that is just our standard products. Like, we haven't tried to make anything yet for sound. But wool is very well known as a wonderful sound attenuator. And so we just do it with our existing products. And someday when we, aren't as stretched as we are now, we may get into making something that would be a little bit more dense and therefore probably grab a little bit more sound.
Okay.
But as it stands, we're outperforming most of the market anyways. So there are some advantages to using us from that perspective as well.
The Tesla of insulation. That's what I see.
It's again, it's back to a wool fiber, right? It's just,
and it comes back to supply. It comes back to supply and demand, right? Because you have 100%. To get it. Because like you just said, America's got nothing, and New Zealand's got it all. So I mean, you'd have to increase your productivity if it takes off. But that's why it's so expensive. Correct? Is that what you'd say?
It's not expensive. The good thing about the expense is you're getting what you're paying for, because the fiber is expensive. Right. The process is quite cheap. They pack wool in New Zealand with a 200-ton press. So I put 44,000 pounds in a 20-foot container. that's pretty close to maximum density, and I move it to my door for about 3% of the amount of the goods. So that's like sort of the bottom end of logistics costs, which is great. And then it comes into my door, and I run some repurposed 60-year-old carding machines that I bought mostly in South Carolina that were part of a bygone era here of manufacturing textiles that have gone offshore. Those machines run on VFD motors. They're all electric. We run gears, chains, pulleys, sprockets. And, every once in a while we clog something up and it jumps out of place and, we replace a bearing. But my power bill is about $6,000 a month. And I'm in a,
wow, Jesus.
I'm in a 55,000 square foot facility running 3 processing lines.
Wow.
So, I think for me, it's just sort of fair to describe what we view as success. And if you go back to that $16 billion industry, if we get 0.5%, we've exceeded our goals.
Right.
And there's plenty of wool for that.
Okay. All right.
So, I think that there's a long way for us to run. There's a lot for us to do to keep us busy. But, we are starting to double quarter on quarter.
Wow, great.
Year on year. We haven't had that, proverbial tipping point, but I can tell you it's a lot easier than it was a couple of years ago. These days, we're a lot more forward with our messaging and our marketing and our, wanting to share what we know, of course, about wool, but what we're also learning about the building space, which we really enjoy. And we like to sort of convey thoughts that we hope are meaningful for people. And it seems to work. And people now are sort of calling more with, how can I get it? And less with,
right.
Why are you calling me and why do I care about wool insulation?
Are you
Right.
all over the country now? Are people, where's your biggest market right now?
Great question. I'm really happy to say I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
We are really active, to be honest, everywhere. So we've got distribution, Eastern Western Canada. We work with 475 High Performance Building Supply near you guys. They're based in Brooklyn. Center for Green Building just picked us up in New York, just north of the city. We're selling it directly into Vermont quite a bit because everyone in New England kind of gets it.
Yes.
We've got a distributor in North Carolina, a company called Caragreen. And then we've got a group that just picked us up in the Midwest. And then we're well covered from Seattle all the way down through California. And then, Mountain West, we do some stuff in Wyoming. Lot happening in the Pacific Northwest with people thinking, forward thinking on building. Mm-hmm. And then, there's always the one-offs that we see across the Southeast as well. So I'd kind of say
you're all over the place.
You're all over the place.
All over the place. And there's got to be some anchor in, let's just say West Coast and Northeast.
Okay. I say to your product, give it some more time. I think it's going to take off.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to take off. I'm like, as builders, and like you said, we are all thumbs up for it.
Yep.
However you do it in the business world,
Thanks, guys.
Make it happen. Yeah.
We appreciate it. There's a builder down in Fairfield, Connecticut, who's a 3rd generation guy. The company's called Hobbies, Inc. And Ian Hobbs is a friend of my brother's, and he's actually been on our advisory board since before we started the company. And he told me at the start it was going to take 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
I'm sure I didn't want to hear that. I bet
not.
Sure,
yes, no.
Yeah, I'm sure I didn't really listen. But I'll tell you, he was right because We're 6.5 years old right now. Year 4 was like, okay, we've been getting our asses kicked for 3 years, but let's keep going.
Yep. You have to.
Year 5 was like, maybe. And year 6 is like, okay, we're definitely onto something here.
Nice.
And we're up for the long haul and the long game. But man, there's been some dark days. So
Oh, sure.
Oh, absolutely.
With a lot of businesses too, but
sure.
With something like yours, and you're trying to muscle into a fiberglass industry, and quite frankly, I'd never even thought of wool until till Marissa, our producer, talked to you guys, and she was telling me about it, and I said, I just never even knew about it. So it's an education process too that you have to go through to get everybody aware of this product and the benefits of it, as well as getting the product here and shipped to where it needs to go. I mean, you guys are doing a great job.
I got a funny story to tell you real quick on the insulation thing. Real quick.
Oh, great. I love this.
When asbestos was like the demon out there, where asbestos abatement, and this, that, the other thing. Me working in the commercial buildings and the insulation, and it was like, okay, there were no masks. Like, what do you mean? You don't have to wear a mask when you install insulation. I'm not kidding you. The pink insulation. I said, why? He says, because the fibers are so heavy, they'll just sink. And that too, also with the heavy green, the green that's the fireproofing that they use in elevator shafts.
Yeah.
That stuff. I'm like, are you kidding me? They go, yeah, that's really heavy. You don't have to worry about that. Wear gloves. So because it's itchy.
Yeah.
I'm like, give me a mask. I couldn't say
that's amazing.
Yeah. It was just like, no big deal.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. Go ahead.
I mean, I can't even be in the same room now when insulation's being installed, because I just start coughing, and it's just horrible for you. It is horrible.
Yeah.
Every single person I've met that's been in the trade, with it for any time, like you guys, they all say the same thing about that stuff.
Yeah.
It's really nasty.
It is. It's really nasty. One other question I had for you though.
Yes, sir.
With the wool, is that considered fire rated insulation?
Yeah. For sure. We ask for no exception. We conform to Class A of the building code. So we've been through the ASTM E84. We passed like everyone else. The flame spread rating needs to be 25 or lower, and the smoke development, I think, don't quote me on this one, but I think it needs to be 400 or lower to conform to Class A, and we do on both fronts. Nice. We're very transparent about everything we do, and so I'm happy to share that wool has a high nitrogen content of about 14%, so it's naturally self-extinguishing, and it really doesn't want to support a flame until above 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. The E84 test is called the Steiner tunnel test. It was developed in the early 70s to measure flame spread across a piece of wood. So for the layman, which I certainly am, if you hit anything with a flamethrower, it's going to burn.
Sure.
And that's what they do with that test. So it seems a little bit silly that maybe we haven't evolved that one a little bit. But something that we have to deal with wool is insects, and certainly moths, and we can talk about that if you guys want to. But a great insect repellent is something that is natural, non-toxic, comes from the earth. It's called boric acid. It sounds much worse than it actually is. I actually visited an old boron mine in Death Valley around this time a year ago. But that serves as a wonderful insect repellent that also has a very slight flame retardancy capability. So we add about 8% boric acid by weight. And it is added when we clean the wool. So it goes into a giant mixing bowl in New Zealand. And it's sort of a white, dusty powder that dissolves in warm water. And it's added to the wool and it attaches to it. You cannot detect it when you touch our stuff. But that is something that also helps us ensure that we conform to that fire rating, like you asked.
Okay, great. So how do people find you? How do they get a hold of this product?
So that is the fun part of what we do. And it's a very long answer, and that's not what you want. I'm going to make it very short.
Does it involve smoke signals or something? Or
No, it's just the go-to-market. We spent years going to meet with architects and saying, specify, and it didn't work. Everyone loved us, but we never got specified.
Yeah.
So we are highly communicative is the answer. You can call us and talk to us whenever you want.
Okay.
When you call us, we will do our best to answer all your questions, and then we will help you find the best way to get our stuff. If there is a distributor near you, we will point you in their direction. If there is not, you can buy it from us directly.
Oh, wow.
All right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So there's options. That's good.
That's wonderful.
There are options.
So, Andrew, the one thing we ask people that are on our show is if they have any horror stories. So we're going to ask you if there's any horror stories that, you came across or you want to share with us.
Yeah, mine is startup related.
Yep. Okay.
I started this company with 2 other people. One of them is one of the greatest individuals I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
He's an American guy, and we were introduced. We were introduced by mutual friends because we both have a love affair for New Zealand. And we've been hitting on all cylinders from the first time somebody said hello.
Wow.
We had a third partner who I would describe as the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah. And that person was in the equation to look after the production. And so I would say within 3 or 4 months in identifying that our head of production didn't know how to produce a product, we had a real nightmare on our hands.
Yeah.
So we moved that person out of the equation.
Yeah.
This other person that I mentioned, he and I looked at each other and said, let's do it anyways. And that's when I moved up to Tahoe. And that's when I started spending every day in the factory. And that's when, we created a business that doesn't have a playbook. And, I would say that the nightmare is, it's not anybody seeking us out. It's part of startups. There's always unforeseen hurdles that you were going to face.
Yeah.
And that was ours. What the knock-on effect is, somebody who's supposed to know about production and doesn't, meant that we had to figure it out ourselves. And so there were some associated challenges with figuring out how to make a bat, for example, because we make a bat with no glue in it. We actually take wool and we card it and we layer it on itself, and then we needle punch it. And so, I had to go find a needle punch with a big enough span to actually run the kind of needles we wanted to run. And so, stuff like that. But I'd say that, if you've got an idea and you talk to the right people, and then you've got the right amount of staying power, and that can be defined in a lot of different ways. You'd like to think that if you just stay at it, when you've got a product that works, the market will catch up. You just got to be willing to wait. But in terms of like this horrible story of, something going wrong or some terrible disaster, in someone's house, I'm very happy to say we have not had it.
Good.
Well, good for you. You're not part of our team anymore, but that's sorry about
Damn
that.
it, I wanted to be on that team.
I know. So many people do. Really, yeah.
We blew insulation into a greenhouse. It didn't work.
It was a bad idea.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're done with puns.
That's it. What a bum.
All right. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. And thanks for educating us. Everybody, please go to havelockwool.com. It's actually a very good website. Very well laid out. I thought very informative, educational. And I also found out how much insulation I would need to insulate my vans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have a little chart there. It tells you how much you're going to need to insulate your vans.
Man.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Very cool.
thank you for that.
Guys, it's absolutely my pleasure, and I really appreciate you having us on. This is it's been a lot of fun, and we thank you for what you do and trying to educate people in a very complex space. So thanks for including us.
So
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think, Andrew, the other thing is too, just let you know, we have a show that we're now working on. We're putting a series together, a seasonal series together for a show called Behind the Studs on the Road. So it may give us an excuse to come out to Aspen and come to your factory. Right,
Yeah.
dude?
We got to go to Nevada.
Yeah.
All right.
Why
All
not?
right.
Why
Yeah.
not?
Well, honestly, you guys are welcome anytime. We have people that tour. Some people come through planning to spend 5 minutes, and an hour later we're like, okay guys, we got to get back to work. You need to leave because it's not something you see every day. So if we ever fit with your plans, just know you're more than welcome.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's awesome.
That's
bro.
very nice.
Thank you.
And don't worry, when Jimmy shows up on site, work stops.
It stopped.
Great.
It's time to have a lot of fun.
I
It's not
love
going to be a
it.
productive
I
day
love
for you
it.
guys.
That's fine. We're okay with that. And by the way, one suggestion, although it's awesome out here in the summer, if you're up for it, come during the winter and we'll go skiing.
Uh-oh.
Oh boy. That's not a good thing for me. Oh my God. Yeah.
Jimmy
Jim,
doesn't ski.
Here's some Jameson. All right, let's go skiing.
Faster.
Faster. Yeah.
One more time.
Yeah.
One more time.
Yeah.
Where's Jimmy? For snowbank
There you go.
on the side of a mountain.
All right, Andrew, thanks again for joining
Thanks,
us. We
buddy.
really appreciate it. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Come on back anytime.
Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful
Welcome.
day.
Thank
All right,
you.
brother.
Everybody, we'll see
Take
you
care,
later.
bye-bye.
See you next week.
It was
See you,
awesome.
Jim.
Yeah, man.
All right, buddy. Bye.
Yeah.